So I've heard that this particular SCP is connected to a voice behind me, which we watched last time. Apparently it's something to do with like the multi-dimensional stuff and like narrative.
Pataphysics.
Let's go.
I've talked about a number of metaphysical SCPs so far throughout this series, those being articles that look at concepts above the normal level of reality. SCPs that look at things like the afterlife, the nature of the human soul, and the existence of God or gods could be considered metaphysical, so there's a fair amount of them. Pataphysics, on the other hand, is a bit trickier, as it looks at concepts one step up from metaphysics. This is quite difficult to define in our reality, but in the SCP universe, this is generally represented in the form of the SCP Foundation realizing that they themselves are fictional. This idea largely stems from S. Andrew Swan's
narrative.
001 proposal, in which the Foundation discovers that their reality is subject to the machinations of a bunch of writers. Pataphysical SCPs often involve concepts that are more or less strictly imaginary, as far as the SCP universe is concerned, that begin to impact their reality through anomalous means. Rather than really trying to dig deep and explain things, I think it's best that we just dive into some pataphysical SCPs. Let's start with something relatively simple, SCP-1304, a method of ritual murder with a lengthy list of requirements that, when performed in a fictional narrative, brings the victim into reality. The narrative must be published by a major publishing house for the anomalous effect to trigger, and no later than 1 week after publishing, a child will be born whose life will mirror, as close as possible, the life of the killed character. Characters from wholly fictional places and locales will be born in real places as similar as possible.
This is like a Korean manhwa plotline.
I mean, I kind of like it that the SCP Foundation is aware of themselves being fictional and just being like a bunch of articles on a wiki. That's an interesting concept. Breaking the fourth wall.
The character hails from another planet.
It's too bad they don't break the fourth wall in like the actual wiki.
Other events in the character's life will carry
I mean, I'm sure they do. Kind of like in A Voice Behind Me.
Parents at a certain age. Fantasy or science fiction elements will appear in an analogous form, such as a pet dragon becoming a pet horse. This individual will be seemingly unaware of the nature of their creation, and those informed of the specifics of their associated narrative find it to be nothing more than a curious coincidence. Any and all attempts to alter the life of one of these individuals in a way that
actually in the SCP universe, and I'm actually not Nadeko.
Will completely fail. In one experiment, in which a character's dog is killed in a car accident on their 17th birthday, the Foundation cordoned off an area 3 kilometers around the individual's home on their 17th birthday. Despite their efforts, involving more than 100 agents, a drunk driver was still able to slip through the cordon, evade pursuit, and strike the individual's dog.
Literally destiny.
Even something as minor and simple as altering an individual's daily route to work, if it was described in the novel, proves impossible. The only deviation that occurs for these individuals from the original narrative is the actual ritual murder. Every individual created through this process lives past the point where they would be killed, at which point their life can be altered as normal. Attempts by the Foundation to recreate SCP-1304 have so far failed, as any narrative they have published doesn't produce the desired effect. It's unclear how so many authors have independently discovered the means to reproduce this anomaly. At least 76 narratives have been published so far, with various authors claiming the ritual came to them in a dream.
Which one it wants to be, because they published the SCP Foundation published novels and it didn't choose theirs.
I mean, I don't know if it's something of like choosing, of it being aware, or if specifically you have to have that writer skill. You gotta be popular enough, or you gotta be noticed by the narrative gods for things to happen. I don't know. I'm not a writer, so I can't control people's destiny.
Imagine a smut novel being published in the SCP universe.
Oh my god. Of course that's what you're thinking of.
I mean, I'm just imagining like the worst ones that are out there.
Oh
the ones that I've read and
fanfics become true, bruh.
I don't write any fanfics, okay?
Film, or they were unclear
Not
where
in
they
public
got the idea
anyways.
from. It is revealed, though, that after the point in an individual's life in which their character counterpart had died, the individual seems to lose some sort of spark of life. Their minds become duller, their lives become grayer, and they lose the desire to grow. The head researcher wonders if they are reflections of their characters, and they lose their shine once the reflection is gone, or if they have now completed their purpose in life and have become nothing more than puppets without puppeteers.
Oh.
Finally, the Foundation decides to try carrying out the ritual murder in the real world on an unfortunate D-class.
Bunch of bugs.
They didn't notice any anomalous effects from the ritual.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Hidden in the text of the article are various pleas for help.
Why didn't you tell me?
Stating that they are not supposed to be here and that they don't want him here. They want to hurt him. It seems that some part of the D-class was reflected in some other dimension, although the specifics of what happened are left unsaid. As I said, that one is relatively simple, but demonstrates more of what we're discussing here, that being different levels of fiction and reality intersecting on one another through anomalous means. Moving from books to a television show, SCP-2614 is a DVD copy of the 5th season of The Sopranos television show. The disc is otherwise normal, unless the play button is pressed on a remote during a specific scene in the show. If pressed, the remote will now allow control over the camera view of the show, utilizing the directional pad and the center
VR.
button. The camera will be free-moving and fully maneuverable, but unable to pass through solid objects. Despite being in control of the camera, the events of the show will continue to transpire in real time, and the scenes will no longer transition where they normally would, allowing the viewer to observe events outside of the script. The fictional world inside of the show is filled with a large number of individuals, and researchers even took the camera to the city of Boston to see the extent of habitation.
Boston.
Despite the overall realism presented, there are some oddities present due to it being a televised world, such as major characters being unusually audible in social situations. The Foundation spends some time wandering the world of The Sopranos, observing characters outside of scripted scenes as they act in an expected manner.
Who thought that there is like a person
the DVD
inside
had
of the
word
TV that's
bookshelf
talking
written
to them.
on it in black marker.
They just really like the show.
Researchers to a bookshelf in The Sopranos' living room. Here they found a note written in a journal reading, "Art is the emanation of man. Man, the emanation of nature. God, the grandfather of art." In other words, God creates man, man creates art, therefore art wouldn't exist without God. The Foundation then discovers that if they move the camera into a screen showing some other form of media inside of the Sopranos world, they can actually move into that world as well. They discover this by moving into a screen in a library.
Like, God receives all of like the praise for creating us, even though we're the ones creating the art, but the God will receive the praise for it because he created us. What is the like twisted thought process? Like, that sounds like a toxic parent-child relationship.
Whoa, Kiwi, calm down. You're the Christian one here. I don't know.
I know. I just noticed that, and I'm like wondering, why is it that we give like God all of the praise when I'm the one? I'm the one that created that angel painting, not God. Like,
oh my goodness. It's been nice knowing you guys. The channel's gonna get cancelled, and it was a fun run.
Sorry.
Showing the Wizard of Oz. They move the camera east for a number of days before entering what appears to be an outer space void colored pink and yellow. Still in the Wizard of Oz world, they move to a private showing of the Disney film Snow White. In this world, they move upwards until they see a continent separate to the one the events of the film take place on. Moving to this continent, they discover a young man in combat with a boar-like creature, and it's revealed that the princess's stepmother is a dark sorceress that had been manipulating events to ensure the crown for her youngest son.
So it's just several layers of different realities?
Screens here, the
or is
researchers
it all
reset
fictional
things back
realities?
to the Sopranos world and move into a screen showing an episode of The Simpsons. When the camera is moved out of the primary city of Springfield, researchers found characters in the style of the show Family Guy, despite the crossover episode between the two airing 10 years after this specific 5th season episode of The Sopranos. The cartoon physics of the Simpsons world was observed to cause considerable environmental and occasionally urban devastation. Back in the Sopranos world, researchers went into a number of other films, including The Last Temptation of Christ, in which, after the final scene, the screen flickers to white rather than going to credits, and the forward movement of the camera was left on overnight. The next day, the camera was stopped in front of a luminescent female figure. The rest of that experiment has been expunged. Then they try a few other experiments, such as entering a commercial, which
It became a bit too lewd, so they had to expunge it.
Of course you would think of it being lewd.
You're the one talking about, like, people's fanfics becoming reality. I don't know.
Imagine a world where Twilight is like actual reality to somebody.
Oh god, no.
Descends into chaos after the 24 seconds of runtime is up, and an MP3 visualization on a computer, which consisted of a dark blue void with other waveforms in the distance, believed to be visualizations playing on other computer screens. Things get really weird though when they decide to enter a screen displaying a popular TV show inside of the Sopranos universe called Sandman. In one scene of the show, another note in a journal was found, reading, "There was no God here, though I cried. I found his shadow and could not die." Going one step further, inside of the Sandman show, which is inside of Sopranos, there is a popular long-running sitcom called Caroline, Caroline. The Foundation managed to enter this show, but found its world completely uninhabited. What they did find, however, was a film playing inside of an abandoned home, a slasher movie titled Snakebite. Upon entering the film during a scene in which the killer corners the main character in a swamp, both characters turn and look directly at the camera. They otherwise remain unresponsive, and while moving the character out of the swamp and into a local movie theater, all characters found behave the same way, following the movement of the camera.
Oh, wow,
in the
they kinda
theater,
creepy.
a romantic film is playing,
Kind
displaying a
of.
scene set in a diner. Upon entering this film, the diner's lights become a deep red color, along with the rest of the lighting in this world. The surrounding city appears to be uninhabited. The sky is black and devoid of stars, although a dark red glow is seen on the horizon in all directions. All of the television sets present in this world displayed only static, so researchers decided to enter one. Once inside, the static appeared more like a cloud or field as the camera moved through. Eventually, the camera view ended up in a
Persona
brightly
4.
lit hallway, only allowing for forward
This
movement.
entire SCP is Persona 4.
As the camera advanced, the image became more saturated, and the rest of the data is expunged.
Can't believe I didn't realize that sooner.
An attached note tells us that this data is concurrent with pataphysical hypermodel DMRG. DMRG seemingly stands for Demiurge, an entity in Gnosticism believed to be akin to a false god
Oh.
who creates
I
a
was thinking
false
of Overlord.
reality to deceive mortals. Basically, the Foundation went a bit too deep, and they don't like what they're seeing here.
As they usually do.
Not a god, but a shadow of a god. That was a hallway inside of a romantic film, inside of a slasher film, inside of a sitcom, inside of a serial drama, inside of a serial drama. So we're getting pretty pataphysical here. Let's scale things down slightly, though, and look at SCP-3166, a 2.1 meter tall humanoid that's presumed to be pataphysical in nature and only manifests when the Garfield media
Yeah, don't worry.
franchise is performing poorly in terms of public reception.
No.
This entity's exterior is covered
Garfield.
with cat fur,
We should-
resembling a
yeah.
crudely made costume of the Garfield character, while its interior is composed entirely out of lasagna.
Wait, it's the Garfield SCP? I was about to say we should watch the Garfield SCP. I love the Garfield SCP.
Wait, there's a Garfield SCP? Oh, I mean, of course there is.
Yeah.
When the Garfield franchise is performing poorly, 3166 will manifest near a suitable individual and begin to approach them with violent intentions. The individual can be someone involved in rival media to the Garfield franchise, someone formerly involved in the production of the comic strip, individuals involved in Garfield parodies, vocal critics of the franchise, or Garfield creator Jim Davis himself, if he was responsible for the franchise's negative reception. Upon reaching the target, 3166 will attempt to harm them through a mixture of blunt force trauma and force-feeding them lasagna, obtained from self-disembowelment.
Oh,
3166 can be drawn away from this goal with the presence of
Garfield.
lasagna, as it will make absorbing the lasagna into itself its primary focus. Through the attacking process, 3166 will vocalize by making various sounds akin to an extremely agitated cat. 3166 first manifested on October 23, 1989, within the Chicago offices of United Media, who published the Garfield comic strip at the time. 3166 wandered around the offices in a confused and distressed manner before assaulting anyone nearby. It disappeared 20 minutes later, although it would continue to appear in United Media offices around the country throughout the rest of the week. It's believed that the Garfield comic strip from October 23rd shows the entity's pataphysical awakening, and no one working on the strip at the time remembers creating that comic. Finally, it was determined that the meat present in the entity's interior lasagna is genetically identical to that of Jim Davis, who has complained of severe mosquito bites on nights preceding 3166 manifestations.
Oh God, no! We're eating bits from Jim Davis. Oh.
Aside from the obvious comedic factor of it being an anthropomorphic version of Garfield filled with lasagna, it's a pretty interesting SCP, and a little worrisome, as the Foundation isn't sure why it appeared in the first place, and can't really control it, outside of ensuring the Garfield franchise remains successful. Let's get back into the deep end, though, with SCP-3309. It begins with a notice from the Pataphysics Department that this file describes an unpredictable narrativic anomaly intersecting with multiple sub-narrative layers. Yeah, sounds pretty pataphysical. We have to be inoculated against the embedded narrativo hazards before we can continue, which involves reading a specific paragraph. Sometimes we don't fade until it's too late, until we've withered to the bone, and at the end, there's nothing left. It's forgotten. Memories, hopes, dreams, were all forgotten. How can we know that people even have these memories, these hopes, and these dreams? Who could forget us if there was nothing there to begin with? We fade from the minds of others, but not from our own. We live with it until we can't live any longer, until we forget that there was ever any way we could live in peace. And then that's when we fade away. Fade away. That finished, we learned that SCP-3309 is a phenomenon in which cataloged anomalies spontaneously disappear, including anomalous objects, entities, locations, and conceptual structures, so basically anything with an SCP designation. Between 24 and 36 hours before the disappearance, a note is added to the SCP's file, which states that if you are not the author and you want to rewrite this article, you may reply to this post asking for the opportunity to do so. Please obtain permission from the author.
Oh?
For those unaware, this message is posted whenever an SCP on the SCP Wiki becomes too low rated and is marked for deletion. After the 24 to 36 hours, all documents related to the SCP are wiped from the Foundation's file systems, including their most secure servers, and the anomaly itself becomes either neutralized or disappears entirely. What's worse, around 71% of disappearing documents are connected to other unaffected anomalies, leading to a weakening of the Foundation's overall containment network. The Foundation decides to see what connects the anomalies that are disappearing, which amounts to around 40 each month. Affected items often involve documentation with excessive containment procedures, with either a misunderstanding of the anomaly's nature or an unprofessional level of care involved. They also tend to be powerful enough to threaten end-of-the-world scenarios, although documentation only outlines partial consequences of the anomaly, and the documents tend to be poorly written or filled with logical and grammatical errors.
Imagine if any isekai protagonist is like an SCP and then they just get deleted because they're so powerful they can end the world. That would be beautiful. Now that I think about it, any isekai that's publicized actually exists in the SCP world. I love that.
We're talking about pataphysics here, so since it's a narrative, apparently it can become a reality in their fictional world, which makes us think, like, is our world a fictional world? Are we just side characters in someone's story?
Again, the meta nature of this is hard to miss, as it's poking fun at the large amount of articles that are submitted to the SCP Wiki every month and are soon deleted due to not being well received. The Foundation, however, looked over these criteria and decided to try altering the documentation for some bothersome anomalies to try and make them disappear. This seems to conflict with the earlier statement that 3309 is weakening their overall containment network, but the Ethics Committee puts the proposal to a vote, and it narrowly passes. They decide to test it on SCP-4463, an anomaly that they can't really control and could flood the entire North American continent in 50 years. The documentation was changed to include heavy grammatical errors and significant inconsistencies among related effects of the anomaly, along with adding various fabricated addenda and an unrelated image. Not long after, 4463 was completely removed from all Foundation databases, and investigations proved that the anomaly itself was no longer active. Mission accomplished. And SCP-3309 is reclassified as Thaumiel after testing it on 19 other anomalies.
That's actually pretty cool, like neutralizing an SCP by changing the narrative behind that SCP and just giving it a bunch of grammar errors and putting random images in its file, causing it to be harmless.
I'm just wondering, like, why Shy Guy and the rest of the really dangerous SCPs still alive then?
It's an ethics issue. We can't do that. It's inhumane. We need to let them live, Kiwi.
Yeah, I mean, you should let my best boy Shy Guy live. Like, he's done nothing wrong. It's your fault for looking at his face.
We're then given a note from an individual named Researcher Smalls, who is assigned to the 3309 project. He ponders what exactly happens to these anomalies that they're making disappear, and what it would be like to simply fade away
to a different
and disappear
dimension
entirely, forgotten by everyone and everything.
Oh,
Another
well, I mean,
researcher then notes that Researcher Smalls did not attend some testing one evening, and no longer appears on any of their itineraries or project files. A doctor says that no one named Researcher Smalls has ever been involved with the project. The researcher says that he must be mistaken because he knows Researcher Smalls and knows him to be the best memeticist they have. If he's gone, then perhaps there's more to 3309 than they first thought, as Smalls was assigned to 3309 since it was first discovered. The researcher also seems to disappear, as their account is suddenly deleted. We then go exceedingly meta, as the final section of the 3309 page resembles a section of the SCP Wiki forums discussing 3309. Researcher Smalls posts here, asking what happened, and if 3309 is causing this. He's reprimanded because role-playing is not allowed in the forums, but he continues. He says that the place he's in is devoid of anything, and something's gone wrong. He says that his name is Adamo Smalls. He studied at the University of Oregon, and the Foundation employed him in late 2010 as a memeticist, partially due to his high cognitive resistance value.
Ask and you shall receive. You were wondering what it felt like to get erased from existence, and yeah. That's how it is.
You were erased from existence.
He was on a long-term assignment to research SCP-3309, but they were fools to believe that they could play with the universe like that. He doesn't recall what exactly happened, but he can remember some things due to his capability for memetic retainment. 3309 started erasing things systematically, including personnel, entire task forces, Foundation sites, and sections of the entire organization, including the fundamental concepts that allow them to create the Foundation. He wonders if he was one of the erased personnel, and says that he doesn't want to be forgotten. This is about as pataphysical as we can get. The idea that, to us, these individuals are just words on a web page, utterly fictional and ultimately meaningless. To them, however, on a narrative level below us, they are real humans, and to be erased so emotionlessly sends them to what is literally their hell, a realm of nothingness. Somehow Smalls was able to maintain a connection long enough to share some information to the SCP Wiki, but he too will eventually be erased and forgotten. The article finishes with, "And so the question remains, are you worth remembering?" You likely find that SCP to be either deep or tragic or utterly nonsense, which I suppose is sort of how you might find pataphysics in general. Let's finish with an especially interesting SCP, which doesn't really involve the SCP Wiki at all. SCP-2747 is a phenomenon appearing in print and online media, whereby platforms dedicated to the discussions of works of fiction begin to mention a non-existent instance of fictional media. In other words, people talking about fiction begin to discuss something that is completely non-existent, treating it as if it were real. These discussions range from brief mentions or comments to entire academic essays. What's more, these discussions include descriptions, screenshots, photographs of physical copies, and brief segments of text from the non-existent work. The descriptions are entirely consistent with one another, and the Foundation has found it's possible to completely reconstruct a non-existent piece of media just based on all these discussions. When questioned, people involved in these discussions deny having written the affected material, and deny the existence of the media in question. The Foundation has yet to find these discussions occurring in real time, only finding them after the fact. Additionally, they have only found these discussions after January of 2008. None seem to exist before that. It's the Foundation's belief that 2747 seems to be evidence of a naturally occurring anafabula, or anti-narrative. There are various ways to explain this, but basically consider it like an anti-meme, which destroys thoughts. The anafabula destroys narratives, to the degree that when the narrative is destroyed, it not only is erasing an entire fictional world, but it is also erasing it from the real world's existence, in this case, the SCP universe. These anafabulas seem to be popping up naturally, meaning that through a unique combination of concepts, tropes, and signs throughout different narratives, the anafabula is coming into existence, leading to the narrative's destruction. The Foundation can't figure out firsthand what this combination is, since it destroys the narrative as a result, but they're working on piecing it together.
I guess all good things come to an end. We're then given a
partial list of some of these destroyed narratives that the Foundation has uncovered. One short story written in 1951 describes an unnamed protagonist's journey towards a desolate black-horned mountain in order to deliver a gift to an unspecified recipient. His journey is rough and treacherous, and he ends up dying of exhaustion, appearing to be no closer to his goal than when he began. An animated film described as a psychological thriller chronicles a struggling manga artist as she attempts to complete and publish her first work under a tight deadline. Stress takes its toll, and she begins to hallucinate, with the film described as occasionally deeply disturbing.
I wonder if this is a reference to anything.
Game released for the GameCube in 2005, in which the player controls a party of 6 unnamed characters as they explore a ruined kingdom in order to find a lost companion referred to as Sister. It was apparently widely panned by reviewers due to numerous glitches, seemingly incomplete graphics, and being impossible to complete.
Oh,
the game's NPCs continuously mention a coal-black thorn-bound tome that would allow someone to obtain great power or unleash a dreadful curse. This tome doesn't seem to be in the game, with one reviewer stating that it's not even in the game's coding. A work of collaborative fiction titled The Scolopendra Wiki, dedicated to horror, speculative fiction, and weird fiction genres. The exact nature of its plot is hard to discern, involving vastly different storylines and a range of character interpretations, as well as other fictional universes and settings. A cast of 7 characters seem to wander between a series of realms, collecting items possessing supernatural or abnormal properties, including a 7-sided obsidian emblem said to possess the power to destroy any object, person, or abstract concept with a single touch. It's apparently in the hands of a sinister, unnamed antagonist who is never seen.
Especially not Kiwi.
A musical album put out by the English rock band Radiohead, consisting of 6 tracks. The majority of the tracks appear to consist mostly of digitally manipulated samples from their previous albums, layered over with sparse acoustic instrumentation and vocals. Reviews were highly positive for the most part, and one reviewer believed the album's central theme to be spirals of isolation and inspiration, of feedback loops that resonate into the level of the deeply personal, the trembling core of creative psyche.
Whoa.
A novel described as the contents of a manuscript and accompanying charcoal illustrations from a reclusive writer and artist diagnosed with schizophrenia. It is a nested frame narrative about a 17th century Dutch mystic who dreams of a supernatural being that is aware of its nature as a dream entity, and is indebted to the mystic for bringing it into existence. In exchange,
sounds like a light novel title.
The secrets of the earth, describing the 6 layers of the planet.
I would read that.
Including the
I think I would read most of the stuff, or
watch
watch most of the stuff he's mentioned so far.
Finally,
well, too bad, they're gone.
Novel of the mystery genre, consisting of a series of narratives from the points of view of 6 characters and a stream of consciousness narration of ambiguous provenance. Eventually, the narratives converge at a roadside diner during a thunderstorm where the characters exchange stories, and the later tales intertwine and reveal further information about the earlier ones. Obviously, none of these works are especially generic, but what exactly they all have in common that creates the Anafabula is a bit trickier to discern. In order to find out what exactly the combination is that creates this Anafabula, the Foundation creates a procedure in which they have computers set about to constantly create procedurally generated narratives. These computers are presumably churning out massive amounts of new stories,
the AIs,
along with
they're writing stories
of every
now.
Story. If a description is found without an accompanying story, that means the Anafabula was created, and they can modify their procedure to narrow things down.
I kind of want to read an AI-generated story.
On the project's overall results, which turns out to be deleted. Well, of course, they can't really define the Anafabula properly without it destroying that information.
Oh, what?
What's worse is that the Foundation eventually came to realize the fact that started this whole pataphysical discussion. That being that they are in fact a fictional universe, and our universe is above theirs. If this Anafabula is recreated through some unlikely means in their universe, their narrative, their universe will be destroyed as well. Overall, the SCP universe is filled with universe-destroying anomalies, but here's another one that's unpredictable and uncontainable. Their universe might just suddenly pop out of existence one day, with nothing they can do about it. So,
that's
what
actually
exactly
meta.
is pataphysics? Well, I'd be lying if I said I was completely sure, but that's okay. It generally involves layers of narratives, and the imaginary interacting with the non-imaginary. But where exactly metaphysics becomes pataphysics is a little difficult to discern. Regardless, these are all really interesting and unique SCPs. From Garfield to Universe Destroyed.
That's a really big jump.
You don't know, I love the Garfield SCP so much.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I didn't know that there was one. But
I've been asking for Dragons Were There and Garfield SCP for a long time now.
the Garfield one? Maybe we'll check it out. I know that the SCP Foundation can, well, from my understanding, it only survives based on like community support. Like as long as people care about it, it'll be there. But if people stopped making stories for the SCP universe and the wiki ended up shutting down, then I suppose that's what they're referring to when they say you know, the SCP universe could just die, just get erased from existence. It's a pataphysical anomaly where they know that they're fictional and their entire reality is hinged on us keeping it alive. I see now though why people would recommend watching this after A Voice Behind Me, because yeah, it does explain the concept of A Voice Behind Me and how he was like a god who could alter planes of existence lower than him. But yeah, that just confirms it, that we are in fact in a higher plane of existence than that god and whatever he was able to manipulate in the SCP universe.
This whole video has just made me wonder if like the two of us talking over Discord and recording a video right now is actually some kind of story that's being told at the side and some webtoon reader is reading it and wondering, oh, breaking the fourth wall, so smart of you, Arthur.
Oh my god. Yeah, it does make you wonder if there are realities that are higher than our plane of existence, right? Then would we be fictional? Or is this our reality? Oh god. Oh, my mind. My brain hurts. It's too many things to think about. I'll just go back and watch anime and forget all about it. Regardless, thank you guys so much for recommending this SCP to us. If you have anything else that you'd like us to watch, leave it down in the comments below and we'll check it out. I hope you guys have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you guys next time. Later, my dudes.
Bye bye.